Here's Gaze for three. Oh, what a shot from Andrew Gaze. He lands a monster three-point bomb.
In 1982, I was selected in the Australian junior team, and in '83 we competed at the World Junior Championships in Spain. Following that, I started with the senior team at the end of '83 and did my first tour, and fortunately was selected to play for Australia at the Los Angeles Olympics. Since then, in '84 was Los Angeles Olympics, then '86 was the World Championships, then '88 was the Seoul Olympics. Then 90, we were in Argentina for the World Championships. Then 92 was Barcelona. 94 was the Toronto World Championships, and of course this year in Atlanta, 96 was the Olympics. Interspersed within that, I had an opportunity to play at University of Seton Hall, where we went to the championship game and lost in overtime to the University of Michigan. Also had the opportunity to play in a season in Italy. I played a season in Greece, and I had a month stint in the NBA with the Washington Bullets. So that's a brief, very brief sort of summarised, condensed version of where my career has gone, concentrating probably more on the highlights. Within that, there's been many other games, tours, club tours to the United States, to Asia, whatever. I think that in order to compete at this level, you've got to love what you're doing. I think that if you don't, I don't think you can have success at what you're doing. You might be able to get by and make a living, but you're not going to have that ultimate success. And you know, it's just been in a very fortunate situation. And while you're going through it all, it doesn't. You sort of look back on that now and say, "Geez, that's quite a bit." But at the time, it's just things that happen, and you every year you're re-establishing your goals, setting new ambitions and what you want to try and achieve, both from an individual standpoint and also from a team standpoint. And while all that's going, I mean, I can remember the '84 Olympics like it was just yesterday, and I sort of look back and I'm going, geez, where's all this gone? But I think because you've always got something new coming up and you're always setting yourself new goals, that the time does go very quickly.
But Andrew Gaze, the jab, yeah! And again, Brisbane are out by 4, so we slow it down for the last shot of the opening quarter. Gaze, over the top of Gribble, he buries 3. Can you believe the brilliance of Andrew Gaze?
Maley, catch and dribble past Blair Smith. Jump shot wouldn't drop. Gordon did well to keep it in bounds. Gaze running quickly on the transition. Holds it up for Copeland, gets it back, dribbles around Rees and then shoots the 15-footer. That will go in. The Tigers back within 1.
I got involved mainly through my parents, particularly my father, who was involved in the sport at various levels when I was born. And he played in the Olympic Games, in 3 Olympic Games, coached in 4 Olympic Games. So he has had a very strong upbringing within the sport. And I think that he introduced me to the game, but also when I was born, he was the general manager of the Victorian Basketball Association, and back then his primary responsibility was managing the Albert Park Basketball Stadium, which is a 9-court facility in Albert Park, and attached to that facility was a manager's residence. So right from day one, right from birth, not only has my parents had a strong influence on me, but also environmentally, you know, living with that as your backyard certainly does have an influence on you as an individual.
Gaze storming toward the hoop, confronted by Andrew Vlahoff. They both crumble. A late call from Alan Godden.
I had many options when I was growing up. Within that same complex, there was they used to be old army warehouse facilities which were converted to sport, and there was the basketball complex. But there was also a badminton stadium, a table tennis stadium, and a squash stadium. And also at the back of that, there was a football oval where they played football and cricket, and also the Albert Park golf course, an 18-hole golf course, was right nearby. So I had the opportunity to play and experiment with many different sports throughout my formative years.
Gaze now called for a charging foul, picks up number 4. And he cannot believe it. The Giants fans are delirious.
I was very committed to sport, and in particular basketball, and sometimes that was perhaps slightly to the detriment of my studies. But you know, when all's said and done, I think that I was fortunate to establish educational goals at a very young age, and although it's taken me a lot longer to finish my formal education, nevertheless it's something that I've had to fulfil and I've really wanted to achieve, and I become qualified. I have a tertiary education, so it took a long time to get there, to fit it in within my sporting commitments, but nevertheless it was something that was a big priority for me. It wasn't as if they saw this strapping young kid running around at a school playground and picked him up. I mean, I was always playing basketball. I can't remember a day without the sport, basically because of those environmental influences of living with a 9-court facility as your backyard. I don't know what it's like to not have basketball as part of my life. So it was more that I just started with the club at a very young age, and I was able to develop through the ranks. And probably one of the unique things about the Melbourne Tigers, which no other club in Australia has, is that we do have a junior development program starting at a very young age, going on to elite level, so kids at a very early age can be with the club and see a clear path or a direction which they can take to achieve the ultimate, and that is, of course, to play in the National League for the Melbourne Tigers.
Here's Gaze. Classic confrontation here between two of the best teams in the league. Gaze and Bradkey, of course, going to the Olympics. Vlahoff and Fisher going to the Olympics, and there's 3 from the man Andrew.
I think that my talents or potential was noticed fairly early on in my career, and you know, nevertheless I still had to serve my apprenticeship sort of thing, and I think because I came into the senior ranks at a very young age, I didn't have the ability really to compete at that level, so you know, I had to sit on the bench and learn the trade and do my apprenticeship before I went on to play. Now that, in the big picture, was a relatively short period of time, you know, maybe a year or two. Back then, the RAS was only in its first years, its very, very formative years, and it was still establishing itself, and I wasn't alone. There were many other players that are around that perhaps had opportunity to go to the Australian Institute of Sport, but declined that offer because at that particular stage there were other programs in place at the club level that were perhaps beneficial or more beneficial than what the RAS could be. You know, you look at the Australian team now, a guy like Sam McKinnon or Chris Anstey, 2 of the players that you see as the #1 guns in junior basketball, neither of those went to the Australian Institute of Sport. But then you have others like Aaron Trahair, Tony Rollinson, Pat Reedy, who did. So it really does come down to the individual and what their needs can be best fulfilled in different programs.
Mackay's lost the ball. Giddy pinched him off it. Here's Gaze against Honeyman to the hole. He was always going to find that a tough assignment. And now the lead is out to 23, biggest of the match so far.
About 82, I started to play more consistent minutes at the senior level, and 83 we won it was called the Southeastern Conference back then, that since changed its name to Southeastern Australian Basketball League to something else, and now it's called the Continental Basketball Association. It's that second division national level, and we won the title in 83, and I was a very prominent player on our team then. And then in 1984, when we came into the National League, I was a very prominent player with the Tigers then. So I'd probably had 2 years of significant contribution to my club team before I made it into the Australian team. Well, at the time, in 1984, I was the leading Australian scorer in the National Basketball League, averaging about 29 points a game. So purely from a statistical standpoint, the selection, I guess you could argue, was justified. But there's more to it than that. There's a lot more to selection than just statistics and numbers. But you know, by the same token, the numbers do carry some weight.
What can the Tigers come up with? They led by 10 points at 3-quarter time. As Gaze goes to the hoop, he draws the foul, comes up with the bucket, he'll go to the stripe.
Andrew Gaze, boy, can he finish. Lots of guys in the league can take shots, but he takes them in crucial situation, absorbs the hit, keeps the basketball free of the contact area, and is able to finish it off. I bet you $100 he makes this one.
Well, I think the ultimate was in 1993 when we won the championship. Having been a part of the Melbourne Tigers since I was 6 years old as a player, and probably before that as a supporter, I guess that it's been a long-term goal is to win a title at the highest level available in Australia. And the highest level right now is the National Basketball League, and the Melbourne Tigers are fortunate enough to compete at that level. And when you consider the hardship and a lot of the tough years that we had to endure in order to get there, it was a fantastic reward for not only myself but also for the club and the other individuals involved in that. To finally reach the pinnacle and reach the ultimate was a tremendous feeling. But you know, having also interspersed within that, within the club system, you know, there's also times where we've been to the United States and been on tours and played against very high-profile universities. We've travelled to different parts throughout the world to play different games. There's been many players come and go within that program where you establish good friends with different people, and all those things make it a rewarding experience.
11 now. 12. Moneyball can tie him up for the lead. It does. One more basket will put him through to the final. There it goes. 15, 16, 17, and 19 for Andrew Gaze. Outstanding.
What a stud.
I think that to finish fourth at the Olympic Games and compete for a medal is you know, very, very good. But you know, we had a similar experience in Seoul. We finished fourth in Seoul. I think the difference this time around is when we got to the medal round, we weren't just content to be there. We had a chance against Lithuania to win the medal. Unfortunately, the way the draw was, in order to get to the gold medal game, we had to play against the Dream Team. But and even in that game, we played very well and only lost by 27 points or something like that, which in itself, on the surface, we would say, geez, a 27-point loss in basketball is a pretty heavy loss, but considering what we're up against, it was a fairly respectable performance. So yeah, it was great and definitely one of the highlights of my career. But you know, there have been other times throughout my time with the Australian team that have been very, very rewarding.
8-second differential between the shot clock and the game clock, which you are watching. Gaze buries three.
If you sort of look at what I did at the Washington Bullets, or you look at it from a statistical standpoint, you say just sort of making up the numbers. But what I gained out of it was the peace of mind in the knowledge that I know that that I could compete at that level, and perhaps if it's something that I had more actively pursued at a younger age, then perhaps I would have had a longer time there. But you know, I don't feel disappointed or feel sort of any sort of regret that I didn't pursue that, because of other opportunities that have been presented to me have been equally enjoyable.